Perhaps you're familiar with the secret ending found in Silent Hill games, where it's revealed that everything was actually the result of a dog. Ever since Silent Hill 4, it's become increasingly clear that it was never a joke, but the actual canon ending. Because a Shiba Inu pulling the levers is the only way to explain the state of the series and explicitly Silent Hill Downpour. This is one of those rare games where you can tell something has gone horribly wrong before you even get to the menu. Just linger on the title screen long enough for the demo reel to play. I don't know about the developers that were paid real money to make this game, or maybe not considering this is Konami we're talking about. I wouldn't put it past them to have locked the devs' families in a slowly flooding basement and told them to finish on time or else. But when I think of the music of Silent Hill, Korn and their particular brand of nu metal is such a slap in the face of the signature style created by Akira Yamaoka that I honestly believe they were trying to kill the man for not wanting to work on it. The only tenuous connection I can think of for picking Korn is that many of their songs revolve around bullied and abused children, which Silent Hill has a fair share of, but having a single point in common doesn't make it a good match. Silent Hill sounds more like Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails feeding the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz into a wood chipper. I have no idea what that even means, but everyone who's played a Silent Hill game in their life is nodding their head at that description. Everything in the game feels a bit off. Like you've stepped into Universal Theme Park's Silent Hill. All of the pieces that make a Silent Hill game are here. But like the draw-by-numbers book in a special needs class, none of it is properly connected. The good Silent Hill games were a masterclass in subtlety, and was the only thing that allowed you to make sense of stuff that didn't really make all that much sense when first looked at. Subtlety can come in many forms, but to me it means having confidence in the person playing the game being able to read between the lines and piece things together on their own. Case in point, this game focuses on child abuse in the form of a child predator and a dead son, a topic Silent Hill 2 covered by giving you a boss called Abstract Daddy, which looked like two people melted into a bed mid-coitus, while flesh pistons repeatedly thrusted out of the walls. Look, I'm not saying it was poetry, but it still required you to rub two brain cells together to figure out what it was trying to tell you. When it comes to Downpour, subtlety might as well be the word on the custom license plate of the developer's second Ferrari for as much as they seem to understand it. In Downpour, you control Murphy Pendleton, a prisoner serving out a sentence for car theft. At the start of the game, he gets to murder a pedophile inside the prison shower room. That's a fine enough start for a Silent Hill game, but from the very beginning there's some problems that stick out like a mishammered nail. Silent Hill is already a metaphorical prison for those traumatized individuals who stumble into it. Making the main character an actual prisoner isn't exactly what I call subtle writing. Second, a penitentiary isn't going to incarcerate the father of a murdered child in the same prison as his child's killer, for the very obvious reason that there might be some bad blood between them. The final handprint in the fresh cement is that Murphy's past isn't a mystery to him like say James from Silent Hill 2, where he'd repressed his memories of the terrible thing he had done. As far as I can tell, Murphy is completely cognizant of his past from the get-go, meaning any mystery the game tries to build is for our sake and not his. We have to fill in the gaps while Murphy just brushes everything off and makes a beeline for the nearest exit, which makes it very difficult to sympathize with him. Napier just walked through the doors directly behind him into the showers where he found Murphy waiting for him with a knife. Yet instead of backing away through the door he just came through, he runs past Murphy to the door on the other side of the room, which is locked. Sometime after Murphy apparently murdered Napier in the prison showers, he finds himself being transferred to a different prison. A prison where they employ women as correction officers for some strange reason. I don't think I need to explain why placing an attractive woman inside a male prison full of dangerous criminals who haven't seen a female in years is a bad idea that would never happen in reality.
Pendleton. Get on the bus.
He was doing just that until you stopped him for an all too obvious antagonistic pause for no real reason other than to build tension between you two.
Tell me something, puta. That true what I heard about you? Did you really do it?
Murphy is in prison for car theft. It even states that outright in a later cutscene. But because one of the endings has Murphy being his son's killer, it tries to hint at that even though it makes no sense now, and would make Murphy's retribution killing of Napier pointless. The bus crashes on the way to the prison so hard that all the people inside of it are thrown miles away except for Murphy, whose handcuffs were removed by the crash without removing his hands. Or at least I assume that to be the case since he wakes up all by himself, without any of the prisoners around or Officer Cunningham, who seems to hate his guts, and most certainly wouldn't have wandered off and left him there at the side of the crash. In a bizarre decision, you can miss the radio that warns you of nearby enemies with static, since you find it in an out-of-the-way location near the crash that you don't even have to walk through. Not that it matters. None of the enemies are ever hard to see coming. They normally stand right in front of you most of the time, and make threatening gestures like they want Murphy to throw the first punch like they're worried about the legality of initiating.
I was just looking for help.
And you just happened to lose your cuffs in the process? Save the bullshit.
He just survived a bus crash that apparently tossed everyone out of the bus, including you.
Pull me up!
I think I counted like 3 total choices you get to make during the game that will determine your ending, and all of them are the same variety of be an asshole or don't be an asshole. I like to think there's a bit more nuance in determining if someone's a child killer or not.
Look, I don't want any trouble. Just point the way out of town, and I'll keep right on going.
Now who said anything about trouble? Just trying to be helpful, son. Name's Howard, by the way.
Silent Hill is a unique enough world that you can fit a wide variety of characters into it, but I draw the line at including one of the absolute worst character roles you can add to any story. I don't think I can get away with saying the name of this particular character type due to our beautiful age of political correctness. So allow me to explain the mailman, Howard Blackwood. He's an African-American male who only exists to offer advice and help the troubled white guy protagonist while also seeming to possess unexplained magical power. There's not even a basis in series lore for a helpful magical black man. The town draws on the inner demons of those trapped inside of it and manifests them to torture and ultimately destroy them. What part of Murphy's mind did it draw the mailman from? His fear of Morgan Freeman movies? Perhaps I misinterpreted all the evil cult business and shambling abominations as being the workings of a malevolent force, when it actually only desired to help the guilt-ridden saps of the world come to terms with their issues, like a dirty, creepy version of Dr. Phil.
I suppose if you're really desperate, you could try the old Skytram. Course, it hasn't really been kept up since the accident.
Maybe don't recommend that way then if it isn't working and is unsafe. It's not long before Murphy is transported to Silent Hill's Hell World, where everything is a giant reminder to schedule a tennis booster. Unlike past games, you won't spend much time here, and most of the time you do spend here involves Murphy running away from a giant ball of energy. Perhaps as a child, Murphy was traumatized by his bedside plasma ball lamp, because I'm having trouble figuring out what this is supposed to represent other than the continuation of a bad gameplay idea that was first debuted in Silent Hill Shattered Memories. I'd question how throwing crates in the path of a malevolent black hole can somehow slow it down when it can phase right through walls, but I'm not going to ask questions to the bullet train running over a bus full of orphans now, am I? You simply gawk in horror and accept the fact that we live on this cursed earth where things like this can and will happen. Inventory management has undergone a drastic change from past games. Instead of being able to hold all the items required to get through the game hassle-free, Murphy can only carry one melee weapon and one handgun at a time, and the melee weapons break after a few uses. Combat in Silent Hill has never been more than a gameplay tool to assure you that you were indeed playing a video game and not a walking simulator, and the Western-developed Silent Hill games have fixated on this as the one issue they can improve, usually by adding a lot more combat to the game. It doesn't matter how much better the combat is, because when I'm going toe-to-toe with what's supposed to be a monster born from my own nightmares with a forehead combo lead pipe beatdown, I'm not going to be very scared of it now, am I? The whole idea was that you should avoid combat if you can, because the lead was so out of their element that they could only put up the barest of fights against enemies when they had to. The very first enemy the game introduces you to is getting its ass handed to it by one of the inmates from the bus until Murphy intervenes, thinking he was beating an innocent woman. Murphy then proceeds to finish the job of killing the lady without even a bit of remorse over getting the guy killed for defending himself. Speaking of enemies, Silent Hill must be having a bit of trouble finding relevant moments from Murphy's past to haunt him with, because the enemies in Downpour wouldn't feel that out of place at some of the concerts I've been to. Grungy lady and grungy man make up 90% of all enemy encounters. The only people terrified of these monsters are parents who are concerned about the music their child has started listening to. Previous Silent Hill games stood out by taking pretty run-of-the-mill enemy designs, then smearing them with a level of psychological trauma and horniness to the point where they become so grotesque you couldn't figure out what you were staring at half the time. Picture an action figure melted in a microwave then stuffed inside of a used condom. Half of the time the AI would bug out, and the monsters Silent Hill had conjured up from the depths of Murphy's twisted past would keep a safe distance from him and never attack, like they were more afraid of him than he was of them.
Something tried to kill me back there. You haven't seen anyone? I'm strange wandering around here, have you?
First-time visitor, huh?
The mine is run by a guy who's upset over his tourist attraction being shut down after an accident killed a bunch of kids inside it. Hint, hint, wink, wink, hidden subtext, hidden subtext. I would have told him that starting a tourism business inside a mine by putting a coaster in it was doomed to fail from the start. Later he kills himself and the game gives you an option to try and save him or mock him. Unlike Officer Cunningham, who fell from a similar height, JP actually dies since he never shows up again. He was simply a mechanism to determine whether Murphy is a callous asshole or not, which plays into which ending you receive.
If you head through the cavern, there's a train. Can take you to Hillside.
The train that got kids killed? This mine, which was converted into a tourist attraction, still has working explosives in it. When I called the game Universal Studios Silent Hill, I did so not expecting to take an actual scary carnival ride. After falling into a deep ravine, Officer Cunningham somewhat tracked Murphy to the other side of the mine, even though you can only reach this place by first taking the SkyTrain, which was disabled after Murphy used it, then taking the underground train, which wouldn't have been available to her since Murphy already rode it.
What the? Where did you get this? Where in the hell did you get this?
I just found it in these...
After noticing the police badge Murphy found, Cunningham can't go through with executing Murphy. Instead, she slumps to the floor and lets him go so she can chase after him and go through this same song and dance 2 more times. After getting through the caves, you reach Silent Hill proper and can start exploring the mostly fake open world setting Silent Hill relies on, since most streets are blocked off by walls or fault lines. though Downpour has littered a few side quests throughout this section to liven it up. There's one where you free birds from cages and a heavy-handed metaphor for prison. Then there's collecting paintings to decipher a clue to a treasure, and bringing several items to a homeless man in a subway. You can probably tell from my descriptions that I didn't finish any of these, and after looking up the rewards for them, I'm glad I didn't waste my time, since it was usually a rare melee weapon that still breaks after a few uses, and access to fast travel, which is only good if you plan to do side quests. The only side quest I completed was getting rid of the roaming police squad cars, and I only finished that one due to how outrageously stupid and annoying it was. Silent Hill is being patrolled by 4 police cars that are supposed to look scary, but look like something that was pulled from Mad Max. Whenever they get close to Murphy, they spawn a horde of death metal drummers. It's so hilariously out of place that shutting it off was my first priority, so I went to a police station and used a radio to recall them. If you were at all curious as to why the game is subtitled Downpour, it's because it will rain from time to time. That's it. It doesn't seem to carry any other meaning other than its most literal one. Supposedly, the longer you stay in the rain, the more powerful the enemies become. But I never noticed any difference, and that doesn't feel like an important enough feature to subtitle the game after a weather pattern. But then again, Silent Hill Shattered Memories was all about ice and snow. So maybe Konami placed a meteorologist in charge of the franchise who had some strange ideas on what people found scary.
Still in town, I see.
Just haven't found a way out. Yet.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
Yeah? Then what?
Well, let's just say I could finally put this damn bag down for starters.
Stop pretending like the mailman is some integral part of Silent Hill. He's never been in the other games, and he only appears in this and Book of Memories, 2 of the worst games in the series.
Can you at least tell me where the radio station is? Someone's been calling in, making these dedications to me.
Murphy had the right idea to just get out of town as fast as he could, but derails that plan because the DJ on the radios he comes across keeps dedicating songs to him, and now he wants to find out what that's all about. So here we have an escaped convict headed to the location where he's being publicly named and invited to. You can come across the apartment from Silent Hill The Room if you explore a bit. However, that apartment wasn't actually in Silent Hill. It's made even weirder since Murphy can get in and out by climbing through the window, which if you play The Room will have you ripping your tongue out just to stop yourself from several days of angry shouting at the gall of that. A fire truck isn't going to drain an entire stairwell on the floor below of water in seconds.
I'll give you access to Napier. Make sure you get some quality time with that worthless sack of shit. I'll see to it no one finds him till I've had a chance to scrub the place down. Keep you in the clear. But in exchange, you're gonna owe me a favor.
The problem with Silent Hill trying to torture Murphy over his dealings with Officer Sewell back at the prison is that it seems to have no effect whatsoever on Murphy. If Murphy has been beating himself up over what happened, he sure as hell isn't displaying it. Murphy might as well be a cloud of molecules floating in a vacuum chamber for as much as anything seems to affect him.
And speaking of rough rides, we got another dedication going out to my man with the plan, Murphy Pendleton. Somebody out there has got an eye on you, MP, so watch your back and keep it on track.
DJ Bobby Ricks runs a radio station that has been playing requests that keep coming in for Murphy. Leading Murphy here seems to have been Rick's sole purpose for being in Silent Hill. I wasn't aware that the entity that is Silent Hill was into drawing in necessary side characters and then calling them on the phone to request indie music. And for as long as this scene goes on, Murphy being here doesn't reveal anything new to him or change anything. All he learns is that Rick owns a boat but someone took the keys.
What's the plan?
Right. Listen, I got this boat. She's moored down at the marina. She's fast, real fast. Problem is some motherfucker ransacked the studio and checked the keys.
I'll hotwire it. No problem.
That's not gonna work. This place, it does strange shit to reality, man. It's like there's rules you gotta follow. You know what I mean?
Rules you've been breaking since the beginning and are breaking even now. As far as I can tell, Rick has no reason to be here. He has no trauma or guilt for Silent Hill to feed on, and was nothing more than a tool to lead Murphy around. But right after this, the mailman gives Murphy a letter that leads him to the orphanage, which means Rick's wasn't needed at all. Didn't you go through this already back at the mine? What gave you your drive for revenge back?
No!
A bunch of female grunge members attack the 3 of them, and somehow Ricks and Cunningham are nowhere to be seen, and Murphy is left in the room by himself. Nice transition logic there. Also, I suppose Ricks dies since he's never seen again. At this point, you get to run from the orb again for a while. I like to believe this is Silent Hill acting on the fears of the developers, and that orb of evil is their looming bankruptcy. Following that, you get on another scary roller coaster ride.
Got something for you. From St. Maria's, the old orphanage up there on the hill.
No. This can't be right.
Got your name on it, doesn't it?
Why didn't you give Murphy that letter back when you met him then? Not only has Silent Hill had to guide Murphy on a journey of mental wellness with a friendly black mailman full of sage advice, it also leads him to an orphanage where a nun is waiting to help him through his next step in personal self-discovery. Silent Hill is beginning to feel like one of those scam wellness courses. I'm just waiting for the pitch where Murphy has to get 3 other people to sign up.
It's a pretty cool car you got there. You like cars? Yeah, my little boy. He used to play with cars just like that. You kind of remind me of him.
Is he dead?
Yeah.
Did you kill him?
Every Silent Hill includes a scene where a child acts oddly, usually separated from the main character by a wall. Meanwhile, I'm looking at this door and wondering why Murphy just can't stick his arm through the bars and unlock it himself. I used to tell myself it would be hard to sin a Silent Hill game, due to how the world can do whatever the hell it wants to mess with the head of the protagonist even if it doesn't make much sense. There's no shortage of moments where the town would plop someone down in a new location or give them a nonsensical puzzle, or even change reality itself to suit its purposes. But somehow Konami was able to screw up even a world where it's completely acceptable for things to happen just to move the plot along. For instance, every puzzle in the orphanage. These chandeliers remain hanging even though the other end of the rope isn't mounted to the wall or attached to a counterweight. Then you have to manage a stage play special effects to transform it into reality. And then later Murphy needs a blackboard eraser to open a cupboard, because a chain drawn in chalk was keeping it closed. Were his sleeves not good enough? Oh God! Darling! This kid who looks just like Murphy's son Charlie dies right in front of Murphy, who was unable to save him. This game is making Silent Hill look like it's out of ideas, since that's exactly what the town did to James with Maria in Silent Hill 2. So this isn't just covering old familiar ground here. They're building a parking lot over an ancient burial mound. After all that, the door just unlocks for Murphy. Murphy is currently wearing the same outfit now that he wore before his imprisonment. He found these clothes in a room and changed into them from his prison clothes. Now that the game has shared the trauma Murphy carries around, it's time to have the black orb of absolute zero meaning chase Murphy through some dirty rooms for a bit. It's a shame, really. Some of the best environments in the game you have to sprint through without getting anything more than a fleeting glance at. Please, please learn how to transition scenes. I'm begging you. Just because you're developing a Silent Hill game doesn't mean you get to be lazy and do things like have someone smash the ground and suddenly the two are standing by a lake and then back in the orphanage once it's over. The boogeyman was Napier, but also Murphy, because Charlie's killer depends on your choices. Regardless, I'm not sure what Murphy has come to terms with by fighting the boogeyman, but the game seems to think he's grown enough as a person to let him head for the final level, so I'm not complaining.
You killed the boogeyman!
Doesn't matter. It didn't bring you back. Nothing can bring you back.
It's not your fault.
This scene only works if you get one of the endings where Murphy wasn't his son's killer. I don't think you're absolving yourself from murdering your own son even if you do kill the boogeyman. The keys for Bobby Riggs' boat are on the table once the body fades away. I guess it's a Silent Hill's way of showing Murphy the door. Bye. Have to make room for the next traumatized person who stumbles in here. Glad you're a better person and all, but we're terribly busy. The boat had already pulled away from the dock with only Murphy on board it. How exactly did you get on it?
You think this is all an accident? Just a big coincidence? This town, it knows me. It showed me things. It wants me to finish this. Don't you understand? It'll never let us go until we finish what we started.
Both Ricks and Cunningham have brought up the rules of Silent Hill. Technically, those exist, but they're more like guidelines and commandments, and you can never really tell exactly what it wants. They can change depending on the context of the game and people. How else would you explain Silent Hill 4: The Room?
Don't you understand? It'll never let us go until we finish what we started.
The town made sure Murphy learned about Rick's boat and then gave him the keys. If it didn't intend for him to leave now, why set it up to look like he was finished?
I'm not going back. You might as well shoot me.
Fine.
Another great transition, boys. Well done. Not at all adding unnecessary confusion while making things hard to follow.
What do you want me to do?
What you're good at, of course. Ridding the world of monsters. I got another one for you.
Who is it?
Don't worry yourself about the details, Cupcake. Just take out the garbage like you did before and we'll be square.
It doesn't make much sense that Sewell would pressure Murphy into killing someone for him after he failed to kill Napier the last time, leaving Sewell to finish the job even though Napier was someone Murphy wanted dead for his own reasons. Murphy wakes up in Silent Hill's overlooked prison, which I should point out looks nothing like it did back in Silent Hill Homecoming. The prison introduces a new enemy type, who's just another dude, like every other enemy. Couldn't they come up with something other than a person with a rictus grin and bad skin complexion? This game's enemies have me believing I'm playing an unofficial sequel to Condemned. Something is pounding on the door trying to get in, which is enough of a threat to make you hurry up and try to escape. But if you fail, what happens instead is the room fills with water and Murphy drowns. And once you manage to escape the room, something with a POV camera chases Murphy through the vents instead of water drowning him. If you don't have a model of some big scary Cenobite looking motherfucker to animate, don't make a pounding door my hurry the hell up motivation. The next section has Murphy using spotlights to trap the monsters in a courtyard so he can pass. Apparently the monsters are afraid of light, which is news to me since I've seen them walking around during the daytime. And I've shined Murphy's flashlight in their face enough times to warrant a reaction. After collecting murder evidence from the scene, it's time to be chased by the orb of whatever the fuck won last time. I was kind of expecting to eventually find out what this is and why it's chasing Murphy all over the town, but the section ends with Murphy escaping and it never shows up again. Murphy has to fight a giant version of the wheelchair monster he's seen a handful of times throughout the game. This is the final boss and I have no idea who or what it is or what it's supposed to represent. The thing is, I don't even think Silent Hill is as complex as the fans believe it is. It's pretty simple to understand once you realize it's a warped mirror held up in front of some sad sap's face, forcing them to look at their own ugliness, and combine that with writers who just wanted an easy excuse for why seemingly random things happen sometimes and move the plot along.
How could you?
What?
He was a good man. A good man.
What the hell are you talking about? That thing tried to kill me. It's not a man, it's a monster.
The wheelchair monster represented Officer Coleridge, who was the correction officer who was helping Murphy with his parole hearings, and was also about to report Sewell for gross misconduct. Depending on the choices you make throughout the game, Murphy either murders Coleridge as Sewell wanted, or refuses to go through with it, leaving Sewell to kill Coleridge himself. How can present-day choices affect the past, you may ask? No idea. Back in Silent Hill 2, James murdered his wife no matter how much of a supportive Boy Scout you played him as, only the context around it changed, from a murder of frustration and wanting to be free of the responsibility of taking care of a very ill person, to a possible mercy killing. And the ending was more or less how James moved on and on after remembering this. This would also explain why so much of this game is generic horror imagery, because it has to account for all three backstories where Murphy doesn't kill Coleridge, kills Coleridge, and even killed his own son. And if you get the ending where Murphy killed his son over a custody battle with his wife, it makes his attempted murder of Napier at the start of the game completely pointless, since his entire reason for doing so is because Napier killed his son and he wanted revenge.
Your father treated me like one of his own.
He didn't die right away, you know. After you were done beating the life out of him, he spent years in that wheelchair.
If the wheelchair man was Cunningham's manifestation of her father, why exactly did Murphy have to deal with him? He apparently never knew what happened to Coleridge after the attack.
Let me tell you what really happened.
You don't know how many strings I had to pull to get your transfer approved, to get you to my prison.
Just as Murphy getting himself arrested so he could kill his child's murderer in prison being an unlikely scenario, it's equally unlikely that Cunningham would have ever managed to get Murphy transferred to her prison, since it would be well known that Murphy was the one charged with the murder of her father.
This wonderful man. Shit and piss all over himself, day after day after day. And every time I looked at him, you know what I saw?
Listen to me.
I saw a monster.
Cunningham now sees Murphy as the boogeyman, and the final fight of the game is you controlling boogeyman Murphy to fight her. And if you choose to spare her, she throws away years of built-up hatred and comes around to the idea that Murphy wasn't the one who turned her father into a vegetable. What brought about this sudden understanding? Sparing her doesn't exactly prove Murphy's innocence.
Jesus, you're pathetic. What about Napier? The guy kills your boy. You go through all the trouble of getting yourself locked up with him, and what happens? I serve him to you like a fucking Christmas goose, and you can't even finish the job. No, I gotta go in there and finish the bastard off for you. I ask for one little favor in return.
Then why do you expect Murphy to be capable of killing Coleridge, who he was close to, if he couldn't even kill his own son's murderer? I received the ending where Cunningham lets Murphy go, and he wades off into the lake, I guess to drown himself, and Cunningham doesn't try to stop him. Also, Cunningham goes to confront Sewell with a gun, meaning she still desires revenge, which is why she was trapped inside Silent Hill along with Murphy, so she clearly wasn't over her own trauma and should still be stuck there. I didn't receive this ending, but it's worth sinning. Murphy got himself sent to prison so he could kill the man who killed his child. I'm guessing they don't have the death penalty in whichever state they reside in, if Napier only received a life sentence. But then the worst ending has Murphy being executed for the murder of his son and Coleridge. So go figure.